begin? We're all looking for the promised land. And in the end, we just need someone to hold our hands. Everybody needs some kind of refuge, something to run to, someone who loves you. I'll be the light guiding you through the night when the stars just refuse to shine. And I'll be your shelter, that safe place to hide, your sanctuary.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Everybody is Addicted. Today, I have a guest named Kat, and she has been kind enough to come on and share her story of how addiction has affected her. So, I am going to start by letting her take it away and share her story.
Hi, everybody. Jasmine, thank you for having me. Um, like she said, my name is Kat. Um, I, man, I'm not good at this stuff. I am 30. I live in Tennessee. I originally grew up in North Carolina, so I grew up in the environment where, you know, addiction, mental health, really kind of anything so-called out of the
The
norm. I don't know.
norm.
Yeah, anything that you could think of like that really just was not talked about. Growing up in the South and my hometown, it was very much so like white picket fence, typical life that you know, would think of. So I was very sheltered as a child, and I think my parents tried to protect me. And I'm the youngest, so I have an older brother. And growing up, I kind of saw him, go out with his friends and party and do things that people in high school did. And I knew just from a very young age I was just very different from that type of crowd. I marched to the
Hmm.
beat of my own drum, was never the one to really cave into peer pressure. um so I really don't remember the first time that I even picked up alcohol. Um, it might have been in high school, it might have been in college, and I really think my first like awakening to the world of, addiction. I was 18, so I was a senior in high school. April of my senior year, I graduated in June. Um, and my mom passed away in a car accident because she was drinking and driving.
Oh,
And
that's hard to deal with in itself, right? And we don't have coping skills, right? Because I'll say, was sheltered. I'm an only child, and I grew up in a small town in Ontario called Paris. And it's very much the same as what you described, just the Canadian version. Anyhow.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and especially growing up in a small town. Both
hmm
my parents worked in healthcare, so there was about 75,000 people in the city I grew
Everybody knows everybody and everybody's
up.
business, and they want to know your business. And all the moms make sure when they go to the parent teacher that they're dressed perfect, so everybody thinks we're doing great.
Exactly. So, my brother was already away from college at that time. My parents were divorced, so it was literally just me living with my mom. And as an
Oh,
18-year-old,
that must have been hard then, because I lost my dad and I lived with him after my parents' divorce. And when, oh yeah, oh
yeah.
yeah, I
So I'm like,
can.
addiction, alcohol, what is that? Like, you are you are speaking a foreign language at this point. Like, you may as well just be speaking gibberish. So
Yeah.
I had no idea. That opened up my whole eyes to the world of addiction. Started to ask a lot of questions, and, you know, to say the least, when you are kind of, open to this world of, this way of life, you have to grow up very fast. Um, well, if you, we don't have to, but.
Yeah, you do because there's so much on your shoulders. You do grow up really fast, really quickly, and it opens your eyes to so much more than what other people have ever had to deal with. And
Exactly.
you were a lot younger than me, so I couldn't imagine at that age.
Yeah. So, I had a lot of decisions I had to make. So, I went off to college that August. It was an hour and a half away from my hometown. So, it was like a good happy medium.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Oh, well, like now I know what alcohol is." Like still didn't really kind of understand the depth and breadth of addiction. Um, you know, especially growing up, I still didn't know, and even, losing my mom, I kind of just wanted to live my life. I didn't really care to learn about what that looked like. Um, I knew my dad didn't drink. He grew up with alcoholic parents. So really the only person in my life growing up, so to speak, that was an addict was my mom. Um, and it was just it was really I don't even know how to like I don't even know what the word is, like confusing, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I got to college and it was my freshman year and I went to an all women's college, so they're all like, let's go to frat parties, let's do this, let's do that. And
Mm.
I'm like,
Because the
okay,
States is
cool.
so
Now
much
I'm
different than us. We don't have that, right? And I always wanted
Yep,
that experience. So I understand how you feel because, like, coming from a small town, I always wanted to have that experience they show on TV where it looks like it's just so much fun, you know? So, anyhow,
exactly.
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. And it was fun for a little bit, and then, you know, I realized not even pretty quickly, but like now I realize it was not as fun as it cracked up to be. Um, I slowly became an alcoholic and I didn't understand it, My mom's mom was alive when my mom passed away. So when I was a junior in college, then my mom's mom passed away. And that's when things really kind of
Hmm.
started to sink in, is that like my mom's mom wasn't even really aware of her addiction as well. And I realized at that point that my mom hid it very
So did
well.
mine. My mom would put it in a water bottle and make it look like she was drinking water. And if you
Yep.
asked her for a drink, she'd be like, well, you should have grabbed your own drink. But I didn't realize it's because she had wine in
Yep.
it.
And, add on antidepressants in the mix and like it just seemed like a functional member of society, My mom held down a great job, like she never got in trouble with the law, so it just kind of seemed normal.
Yeah, I get
And
exactly what you mean.
I went once, my mom's mom passed away, I realized, okay, like there was probably some issues there. But I wasn't really ready to face them, even if at that point I didn't even know I had a drinking problem because my biggest priority was just making it through school and
Mm.
not getting admitted to a mental hospital or I don't know, dead.
Oh,
No.
yeah, with what all that going on at that age and trying to take on school mentally, because, like, obviously your brain doesn't fully mature until you're 25 years old. So you're experiencing all of this before your brain has fully matured. So your, like, emotions and everything else are still like settling in and you're still learning who you are and you're having all of this trauma come right at you. It's like, how else do you cope, right?
Exactly. So I was like, we're just gonna figure it out. And then, kind of flash forward to, so I graduated undergrad in 2017, flash forward to the pandemic, pretty much 2020. I uprooted my life in North Carolina. I had lived there my whole life and moved to Tennessee. And that's when I kind of realized, okay, I live in a party city. Like, still, I was a lot like my mom, a high functioning alcoholic, right? I kind of knew in the back of my head I had a drinking problem, but I didn't really understand what an alcoholic was, right? I don't know if anybody has watched the show Shameless, but I was like, I'm not as bad as the dad. I don't need a drink when I feel
Yeah. Yeah, you seem like you're kind of like me. It's like when it's not an everyday thing, but when it is once you have that first drink, it's not pretty after a while. But it's like it's not an everyday thing. It's like a once or twice a week thing at most, right? I get exactly what you mean. It's not like you're like, I need a drink when I get out of bed, or people, I've heard them say, I have to have shower beers just so my hands don't shake, right? It's a little different. So that's also why I get why it was harder for you to be like,
Yeah.
I'm an alcoholic because I was the same way because I'm like, I'm not really an alcoholic per se. I'm not like that. Yeah, I get it.
That's society, and I was like, oh, well, like I have a drinking problem. And then, I was living with a roommate at the time, and I wasn't really aware of my actions when I was drinking, right? Other people were. And, I was so codependent on that person. They gave me an ultimatum. They were like, hey, like you have a serious drinking problem. You need to get help or I'm moving out. And I don't know what it was that like clicked inside me. And maybe it was just the severe codependency, I don't really know. And I've always kind of like not been codependent. So I was like scared. I ran with my legs tucked. I was like, well, I don't want to live alone right now. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll stop drinking and go to AA. It's like I just quit cold turkey. Still not understanding that I was an alcoholic because
I was the same way, and for I was the same way, and it was the ultimatum that got me to AA, but I didn't realize that I had a problem with alcohol. Even sitting there in AA, I'm still thinking, well, I'm not as bad as these people when they're sharing and stuff. So I'm still not looking myself in the face, right? Because I'm like, I'm not as bad as
yeah,
them. So it makes it hard when
yeah,
it's an ultimatum, right? Not you
it is.
putting yourself there.
Yeah. And I was angry at first, but I was like, I'm going to listen to people's stories and I'm just going to shut my mouth and stop talking. And it was, I think, I don't know if it was at a meeting or if I was talking to like another sober, like acquaintance, but somebody broke down, how they viewed like alcoholism and addiction. And they were like, they asked me, they were like, can you control your alcohol consumption on a consistent basis? Yes or no? And I was like, no. I'm like, you're an alcoholic. And I was like, okay. So I sat with that for a few days. And I was like, okay, well, if I have a bottle of wine sitting at home and I'm not going anywhere, I will not stop drinking until that bottle is gone. And I was like, I cannot control this. I'm a freaking alcoholic. And I was like, it probably took me maybe a month or two into AA to understand, well, I guess I am an addict. Like, I got to figure it out now.
I I was the same way, and it took somebody kind of like the same thing. He was native. He's sadly passed now, but he's Native American, and he would talk to me about their views on just like life and everything, and just how he'd gone on this spiritual journey and all this other stuff. Like he was just very wise, right? Almost like how that person broke it down for you, right? And that I was the same way. We were like driving to a meeting, and we picked somebody up who was still struggling and was drunk in the car, and all of a sudden what he was saying just clicked, and I was like, damn it.
And
You're
somebody
right.
that. And I say that to like people that I know are struggling, that I ask them the same thing. I'm like, hey, can you control your drinking on a daily basis consistently? They're like, no. I'm like, well, then you're an alcoholic. Like it's really that simple. Like,
Hmm.
can you see a 6 pack of beer and have one and stop or have two and stop? Like, if the answer is yes, then you don't have a drinking problem.
And like that's the thing because the way that society makes alcohol look is like that it's so much fun, right? Like I have a friend who's I'm going to be 37 this year. So she's the same age as me.
Mhm.
And she still goes out every single weekend, gets dressed to the nines, does the thing we would have done when we were like 22, do you know what I mean? And spends like $400, Ubers, booze, everything. And then she sleeps the rest because we're older now. Our bodies, one night of drinking takes 2 days at least to recover. She
Yeah.
has a daughter who's like 10. She doesn't even get out of bed all weekend. And her husband sometimes isn't home, and her daughter would just be like by herself. And it's like, you are also an alcoholic, but I don't know how to like get you to understand that. And even whenever I hang out with her, it's let's have drinks. When you come over, we should have a couple drinks. Always drinks, 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 drinks. And it's like when you stop and listen, if I could just record her and how often she says with drinks in like 10 minutes, maybe it would get through to her. Do you know what I mean by that? Like,
Yeah.
because to
You
her it just,
time it, like not even time it count.
yeah, because it's like FOMO for her, but yet it's not like she's just going out and looking nice. She's getting trashed and staying out till 4 a.m. That it is a problem, but like I said, like she doesn't view it that way, and it's like you need somebody, like you said, that can get it to click. And I don't know how to get it to click for her, but it's got to be something like that, you know? Her husband, his health isn't great, so he isn't really drinking. So maybe he will be able to like click her in, you know what I mean? By fully quitting, maybe it'll make her feel like maybe I shouldn't do this too, because look at how unhealthy my husband is from drinking and being stressed, you know? Because you still work, right?
Exactly. And one of the biggest things I learned is that recovery and addiction looks different for everyone. People
Hmm.
say that you don't get sober unless you want to, but honestly, I don't know if I believe that because I didn't necessarily want to get sober because I didn't think I had a problem. But like, it really is just it varies from person to person.
Well, when I did opiates, I didn't necessarily want to get sober, but my husband had a heart attack, right? And he can't take opiates anymore. So I quit for him and his health, right? But it wasn't like it was my choice to quit. I just did it out of respect of not doing drugs around him, or you know what I mean? Like I didn't want to hurt him to get into what I have and then have a heart attack while I'm sleeping and things like that, right? So it wasn't like I necessarily walked into a methadone clinic because I thought I had a problem. I walked
Yep.
into a methadone clinic for somebody else, just like I walked into AA for somebody else. But I realized, like you said, through talking to other people that have had been sober for long periods of time, you realize, like, because like what that woman said to you is so bang on. Like that is basically exactly it. It like it really is. And that's I've had a lot of people say things similar to that to me too, right? Like, can you just have one or two? Can you go home after four? No, then you have a problem. It really is that simple, right? But how many people, like, there's so many people that wait for the weekend just so they can drink that 2-4 because they don't
Yeah.
have that person that in their ear saying that, right? And that's
Yeah.
why I feel like alcoholism is probably one of the harder drug addictions, or like not like drug addictions, but addictions to get over, because they teach you in TV that if you're happy, you drink, if you're sad, you drink, if you're celebrating, you drink, and that just even if you're hanging out with your friends, you drink, right? So we're already kind of like programmed like it's okay to do this, right? And then we people like that are predisposed to alcoholism, like I am, and like you've said with your family as well, right? We don't realize the real consequences of it until we start drinking, and then it goes downhill after a while.
Exactly. And sometimes, for me, I didn't even realize the consequences of my drinking until a few years into recovery. Because, when you're holding down a job, like I was living alone, paying my bills by myself, like it it wasn't at that point where I was reaping what I sowed, like it took
Yeah,
a while. And in terms of like recovery, I'd say my recovery was like picture perfect. I didn't have to go to rehab. Like,
neither did I.
and I mean, maybe I don't know. Like, I
Everybody recovers differently. That's the thing, right? Like some people need rehab. I got the most out of going to a methadone clinic. You were talking about how you go to meetings, right? Like it's just whatever works for you is going to be the thing that gets you to
Mhm.
how, but I do agree with when you're first deciding to get sober to go to a few AA meetings because you will pick up a lot of information that you never thought of. You know what I mean? And a lot of advice.
Yeah. And
Even
for
if
me, it's about community. I didn't know anyone. I mean, I lived in a party city, right? Like, I didn't know anyone who was a recovering alcoholic. And, I wanted to meet people in that community. And, I go to AA meetings every now and then, but eventually I met enough people and built enough of a support system in recovery that I stopped going to meetings. So, like, I am a very chaotic, bold personality kind of person. So I try to simplify things as much as possible, with the whole, hey, can you control your drinking on a daily basis? Yes or no? I was like, okay, that's simplified. And then I started to think and I was like, okay, so it's like, I can choose to drink or I can choose not to drink. I was like, at the end of the day, like, you are choosing whether you succumb to your disease or not. Like, people don't choose to get addicted. I think they choose whether or not addiction is going to win.
that
And
is 100% true.
I was like, I am a strong-willed, motivated person. And I was like, I am not letting addiction win. I said, I am never drinking for the rest of my life. Like, I was like, and every single day, I still 3.5 years in sobriety. Every single day you have to make that choice, whether you're gonna pick up a drink or pick up a drug or whatever. And I am so freaking stubborn. I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm getting my sobriety date tattooed on my wrists.
That's
So
awesome.
and it's like so they're like right where like I can see them. So it's like
Yeah,
okay, I have like the date, the month and the year. No, hold on. The month and the day on one wrist and then the year on the other. So no matter what hand I try to pick up a drink with, if I drink, that automatically makes me a hypocrite.
smart.
And I was
That
like, I am
is
a lot of things,
smart.
but a hypocrite is not one of them.
That is so smart because it would like just
Not,
make you stop and think for a sec and you're like, nope.
yep.
That
It's
is so
literally
smart.
staring at you in the face.
Yeah, that is so smart. I would have never thought of doing it for that reason. Do you know what I mean? That
Yep.
is so smart. Oh my gosh, like anybody who listens to this, I swear I'm gonna get messages underneath being like, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that because it is probably one of the smartest things I've heard from like people with alcohol issues, like out there because it's like that thing because alcoholics when they relapse cause I had before, right? You feel so guilty and you look at that stops you from having that drink and feeling that guilt because gives you that few seconds to like look at the reality of it, and like think about it more. And
It's
like if you're
it's that
stubborn,
way that like I can't and like when I on my hard days, I think about, well, yeah, it would be easy. It would be to make the easy choice to, pick up a drink, but like life wasn't meant to be easy. Life also wasn't meant to do alone. So it's like now I have this reminder every single day staring at me in the face that like you can't go back to your old self.
and I do agree, like having sober friends that like you've met from it and stuff that you can lean on is incredible. Like my mom lives in the granny suite of a friend of mine who actually got me to go to my ex pushed me to AA, but I had ran into my friend right before and he had started going and he looked so healthy and he looked so happy. And I asked him, holding a bottle of wine, how he did it. And he's like, going to AA, but I'm not judging you. Do you know what I mean? And
Yep.
then I started going. I seen him there and stuff like that. He also goes to the same clinic I go to, and my mom lives with him, so we're rather relatively close friends, and our daughters are friends and stuff, right? So, but we talk about, how they always say, oh, it's the first drink. No, it's you think about the last drink. That's what we both say that keeps us sober. It's thinking about the hangover, thinking about the guilt, thinking about the anxiety, thinking about who you have to apologize and like, why ever have to do that to yourself again?
Yep.
No, right? Like,
Because
especially like you said, you're in your 30s. Once you get older, like, I don't know. I feel like your body, it's poison. Like nobody really like on cigarette packages, they have those disgusting labels. They should have that on alcohol instead of the making the bottles look sexy. You know what I mean? I took advertising and they said that they make alcohol look sexy. That's how they sell it, right? That's like their main marketing scheme. And but yeah, cigarettes, no, they don't make them look good at all. In Canada, you would be disgusted to look at a cigarette pack. But alcohol has just as many effects. Like my dad had congestive heart failure due to drinking because it made his heart fatty. Well, they don't say that like they do on a cigarette pack, right? So it's like, oh, drinking, but if they like literally let you know that it's poison, and the reason why you black out is because of all the you put so much poison into your brain that that part of your brain is covered and you can't remember, and it's like because it puts you in like a certain like mental state, right, where you can't remember. I took this in school so long ago, like I can't. I'm don't quote me 100% on the words I'm using, but it's coats like your memory, right? So then that's why you black out because it's actually poison. But
yep.
I was never told that. I just thought it was whatever. My
It's like
grandpa
it's
made
not
it.
even romanticized is not the right word. Maybe glorified. Maybe that's
Yeah, I like that word better than what they glorified is much better word.
yeah. And that's what alcohol is. Oh, you always want to get the cutest bottle, or let's take the cutest picture with my. And I'm like, this is
In the winery.
a Ponzi scheme. Like,
By the government too.
and I was just like, once I realized that, like, as you get older, it really is poison in your body. And I was like, once, and obviously, like the first year was difficult, but eventually I started to reap the positive effects of being sober. And I was like, like I can't imagine going through the hard days being drunk. Like,
Not anymore. Not with like some of the things I've just went through. Oh man, if I was drinking still while dealing with all of that, I would have, oh, I'd be in so much deeper than like, oh man, I would have like ruined my life.
yep,
And like, you're so right. Like, I'm so glad that like you made so many good points. Like, you like made me think, because like obviously like everybody has a different perspective, but like you've had some really good ones that I didn't ever really think of. So that's why it's so nice to like I usually only you're the first person I have had on here that is not from the city I live in because I said it's so full of addiction, right?
yep,
But I'm trying to branch out because I had some negative feedback towards somebody in the city
hmm,
due to she is LGBTQ and people were very, very, very rude to her. So I decided to take it out of the the area, because like I said, it is a small area, so that because she was upset because it was a story about her mother, not about her having addiction, right? It was about her mother, and it's all she wanted to share, and everybody ruined it, and so I took it out of that area so that it doesn't happen to somebody else, because that made me feel so bad because that was never my intention, right? I just
Yep.
wanted her to tell her story. I didn't mean for people to be so mean, right? So I decided, I'm going to open it up and try to meet new people from different areas so that
Yep.
we don't have any negative feedback from people, because everybody knows everybody and everybody likes to say nasty things, right? So yeah, you're my very first guest from somewhere other than Brantford, Ontario.
Well, you
So that's
know,
why I said it was so cool that you have so many things I never thought of, and it's probably just even from the fact that we're from different places, right?
it could be, yeah. And I always say, in terms of like recovery and addiction, less is not more. Like, I always say, try to talk to like as many people as possible, especially in early recovery. And even, whether it's somebody who might not be an alcoholic or an addict, but somebody who has, a family that is, because everybody has their own experience with it, whether they know it or not.
That's why I call it everybody is addicted, because it's either the family that is affected by it or the addict themselves. Like, do you know what I
Yep.
mean? So I mean, it's everybody's affected by it. It's not just the addict, and that's why I use that name, right? I don't mean like everybody has an addiction. I mean like everybody's affected by it in some way or another, like you said, right?
They are. And especially with I wouldn't I can't speak on behalf of drug addiction because I never had that, but alcohol addiction is very easy to hide sometimes. And people might say, "Well, I don't think I know anyone who's an alcoholic." And I'm like, you probably do, you just don't know it."
Hmm. I don't know how I wasn't like, I had a boss who was in my AA group, and I don't know, I had relapsed. I don't know how she didn't realize it, because I was a waitress and I shook, right? And I'm serving drinks, I'm shaking, I'm sweating. I don't look like I normally do. My behavior's different. I'm calling in sick way more. And you're you're in AA, so I figured that she would have picked up on the fact that I had fallen off the wagon and she was my boss. Maybe she did, and she was giving me some grace by not saying anything, because I was still coming to work and I was like, not, it wasn't affecting my job, but I still, you could tell, had some issues going on if you were somebody that knew what an alcoholic looked like, right? So I don't know how she didn't say anything to me or fire me. There's other jobs where I drank on the job. I don't know how they didn't fire me for that. But it's like you said, like people don't notice because they're not looking for it.
Yep.
I think that's what
It's
it.
not waving in your face, it's not tattooed on your wrists.
Mm,
Hey, your brother's an alcoholic right in front of your face. Like,
exactly. Or I'm an alcoholic right here. Like,
and that's why I'm glad platforms like this exist because people need to talk about these things. And like you think about, I mean, not even necessarily having kids, but it's like, look, like if people don't talk about it, like, I have friends that like just don't drink at all, right? They're not addicts. They've just like
yeah,
they're not alcoholics. They've just never drank because they grew up in alcoholic families, but they knew that they grew up in alcoholic families and they saw the effects that it had on other people. And it's crazy what happens when you talk about it and versus when you don't talk about it. Because I grew up in that household where my parents didn't talk about it. And then what happened, I turned into an alcoholic.
that's the same thing with me and my like best friend growing up, Nathan. His dad was an alcoholic. We all knew it. They talked about it, and he doesn't drink at all. Like it never ever has, and even at parties we would try to get him to drink and he never would. He was always the sober one, and he still had fun and stuff, right? But you're right, it's because his family talked about it where none of our families did. And that,
Yep.
see what I mean? Like I never saw that either, right? Like that's probably why he didn't want to drink, because he didn't want to be like his dad, right? Well, I kind of know
Yep.
that, but I never thought of it like as important as it really is, because like back then I was so young that I never really thought like I was like, oh, Nathan just doesn't drink because his dad had a problem. But like that problem went deep, like I don't know the inside of the door, but I do know that it ran deep because even his sister doesn't drink. Do you know what I mean? So I know that it was something that affected their whole family.
Exactly.
And even the fact that I know about it, or when I got in a drinking and driving accident and his mom cut out the freaking article from the newspaper and handed it to me, like it's just, yeah, the more people talk about it, the more it brings awareness. And like even like my daughter, she knows that drinking makes you sick. Drinking's not healthy for you. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think our generation, at least this day and age, does a very good job at, talking about it. I wouldn't even say that it became quote unquote mainstream to talk about until, I don't know, maybe 20 some odd years ago. I don't know when AA was created, but I know when my mom was growing up, it was not a thing to talk about addiction.
AA was actually created in the 20s because one of my favorite quotes is by Lois Wilson, Bill Wilson's wife. And I actually, my 6 month chip is off Bill Wilson's grave. So I know a little bit about it. It was the 20s, but it was always very small and very much a men's club. Not very much women weren't really like included in it. Do you know what I mean? So as it grew,
Yeah.
probably more like you said in like the 90s and the 2000s, that's when it was more acceptable for women to be an alcoholic and all that other stuff too, right? Like there's just I could get into politics about it, but you know what I mean. Like it was just more acceptable to talk about and admit as time has gone on, especially after the pandemic, because the pandemic really brought it out in a lot of people from like whom I talk to, right?
Oh, yeah. Exactly. And sorry, my video was being weird for a minute. Yeah, because they're sitting at home alone. They have nothing else to do. I'm just gonna start drinking. So, I say try not to put addiction and alcoholism into a box. Try not to compare yourself to other people that are sober. Like the one of the best things I ever did is just I live my life for me. Like and you have to be confident that you have to be confident in the fact that you can stay sober and stay clean because nobody's going to believe in you more than yourself. And if you cannot find that trust from within, you're going to live a long hard life.
Well, you know
So, I mean,
what?
that's my 2 cents, but
I couldn't have said it better, so I'm gonna leave at you at that because that was just so good. So I'm gonna leave it
yeah,
at that. Um, and yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And I learned so much from you. It was amazing, and it was really nice to meet you. I sometimes like I always check in with the people that I do podcasts with just because it is a recovery kind of community thing, you know what I mean? So I will be in contact with you shortly, and thanks again for coming on,
of
and
course.
have a
Thank
good night.
you. I will talk to you soon.
I'll talk to you
Bye
soon.
bye.
Bye.